Welcome back to the Calabash Diaries, where we open the gourd of history and pour out the untold stories of Africa's greatest kingdoms. Today we journey into the lush rainforests and river valleys of Central Africa, where a mighty kingdom once thrived. This is the story of the Kingdom of Kongo, a land of kings, warriors, faith, wealth, and tragedy. Fun fact: the word Kongo itself comes from Bakongo, meaning hunters of leopards. To the people of the forest, the leopard was the ultimate symbol of royalty and power, often worn as a cloak by kings. The story of Kongo begins with migration. Around the 13th century, Bantu-speaking people moved from the savannas near present-day Cameroon into the fertile Congo Basin. Drawn by rivers, fertile soil, and forests filled with game, they began settling in organized chiefdoms. These small groups gradually united, forming the great Kingdom of Kongo around the 14th century, with its capital at Mbanza Kongo. Oral traditions say the first Congolese ancestors followed a sacred bird, the Nkisi or eagle, which guided them southward. This is why eagle feathers became a royal symbol, and chiefs were often buried with them. Mbanza Kongo, their capital, was called the City of Stone because its central plaza and royal palace used carved limestone long before Europeans introduced masonry. The Kingdom of Kongo was ruled by a king known as the Kongo, Lord of Kongo. The Kongo governed 6 major provinces, each ruled by local nobles, but all pledged loyalty to the throne. This balance of power created a strong, centralized state, admired even by European visitors. The royal throne of Kongo wasn't a chair, but a carved wooden stool, decorated with cowrie shells and leopard skin. These stools were believed to hold ancestral spirits, meaning the king ruled not only with earthly authority, but also with the voices of past rulers. Even today, the Kongo stool is considered a sacred royal object. Before Christianity reached Kongo, the people practiced a rich spiritual system centered on Nzambi Mpungu, the supreme creator. Priests and diviners acted as intermediaries, using sacred objects called Nkisi, wooden or clay figures filled with herbs, bones, and charms believed to channel spirits for healing or justice. Nkisi were not just for healing, but also for legal disputes. If 2 parties argued, a priest would drive nails into an Nkisi figure while both swore oaths. Breaking the oath meant risking spiritual punishment. This practice later blended with Christianity, creating syncretic religions still practiced in Central Africa and parts of the Caribbean today. At its height, the Kingdom of Kongo was one of the most sophisticated economies in pre-colonial Africa. Its wealth was built not on gold, like Mali or Songhai, but on agriculture, trade, copper, and textiles. The fertile lands between the Congo and Kongo rivers provided millet, sorghum, yams, bananas, and palm oil. The kingdom also produced salt, ivory, and iron goods. Trade routes crisscrossed the kingdom, connecting its provinces with the capital Mbanza Kongo, which the Portuguese once called São Salvador. Here, markets bustled with food, crafts, raffia cloth, and imported goods. At first, Kongo was largely self-sufficient and wealthy in its own right, but with the arrival of Europeans in the late 1400s, the kingdom's economy began to shift toward dependency on Atlantic trade, first enriching it, then destabilizing it. Kongo's wealth began with its fertile soil. Palm trees were especially valuable. They provided oil for cooking, wine for rituals, and fibers for weaving. Women dominated farming, producing manioc, cassava, beans, millet, bananas, and later maize, introduced from the Americas via Portuguese contact. Surplus farming allowed urban life to flourish in Mbanza Kongo, where elites could focus on politics, religion, and trade. Fun fact: Oral traditions say that palm oil was so central to Congo life that people joked, "A man without a palm grove is like a king without a crown." Before Europeans, raffia cloth, woven from palm fibers, was the main currency. Skilled weavers created geometric patterns, which were so fine they were prized as art. These cloths, called mbongo, were used in daily trade to pay taxes, and even as bride wealth in marriages. The raffia economy also reinforced Congo's class system. Only elites could wear certain high-quality designs, marking social rank. Portuguese traders found raffia so useful that they adopted it as currency in Central Africa. For centuries, bales of raffia cloth were shipped alongside ivory and copper to São Tomé and Brazil. Congo's copper mines in the province of Nkisi were legendary. Copper wasn't just a resource, it was prestige. The kingdom produced copper crosses, called nzimbu, flat ingots shaped like crosses that served as standardized money. These became widely recognized currencies in regional trade. Iron was equally important. Blacksmiths forged weapons, tools, and ceremonial regalia, giving Congo both military strength and cultural identity. Copper from Congo has been found as far as Angola and Central Africa, proving how extensive Congo's economic influence once was. Another unique form of wealth was nzimbu shells, tiny seashells collected along the coast of present-day Angola. The Congo kings controlled the only access to nzimbu, creating a state monopoly on currency. This gave the monarchy immense economic power, since taxes, tributes, and salaries of officials were all paid in shells. This system allowed Congo to maintain centralized control, unlike many other African states that were more decentralized. Hidden detail: nzimbu shells were so regulated that counterfeiting or stealing them was punishable by death, showing how seriously the kingdom guarded its economy. Congo was not isolated. It traded deep into Central Africa, exchanging salt, cloth, and metal for ivory, leopard skins, and slaves. Caravans of porters traveled long distances, creating a web of commerce that tied villages to the royal court. Cultural note: these caravans weren't just economic. They were also cultural highways, spreading Congo's language, rituals, and fashions across Central Africa. When the Portuguese arrived in 1483, they were stunned by Congo's wealth and organization. They described Mbanza Kongo as a city with stone buildings, a royal palace, and tens of thousands of residents. At first, trade was mutually beneficial. The Portuguese provided luxury items: silk, wine, horses, glass beads, and firearms, in exchange for ivory, copper, and raffia cloth. Christianity also became intertwined with trade. Adopting European religion was a way for Congo elites to access prestige goods. Portuguese observers noted that Congo's raffia cloth was so fine that even European nobles admired it. Some Congolese cloths ended up in Portuguese courts as exotic treasures. Fun fact: raffia cloth, woven from palm leaves, was so valuable it became a form of currency. Patterns in raffia were highly symbolic. Some meant peace, others war, and some were used only for burials. Wearing the wrong pattern at the wrong time was considered a grave insult to both ancestors and chiefs. The capital, Mbanza Kongo, stood on a plateau overlooking valleys and rivers. By the 16th century, it impressed Portuguese travelers, who compared it to Lisbon for its size and stone architecture. Streets were laid out in grids, and the royal palace stood at its heart. The Kingdom of Kongo was not simply a political powerhouse. It was also a cultural landscape defined by impressive architectural styles that reflected the kingdom's wealth, power, and spiritual depth. Unlike the stone monuments of Great Zimbabwe or the stepped pyramids of Egypt, Congo's architecture was unique to its forest savanna environment, its riverine trade networks, and its socio-political hierarchy. At the heart of Congo's capital, Mbanza Kongo, stood the royal palace, a sprawling compound built with wooden frameworks, clay walls, and thick thatched or palm frond roofing. Over time, especially after Congo's encounter with the Portuguese in the late 15th century, the architectural style of the palace began to incorporate stone foundations, vaulted entryways, and tile roofing, blending African and European forms. The palace was not just a home, it was a political hub. Its courtyards were laid out in a way that reflected the Congo's emphasis on hierarchy: an outer courtyard for the general population, an inner courtyard for nobles and advisors, and the most sacred chambers reserved for the Mani Kongo, king himself. This layering of space symbolized the cosmological structure of the Congo universe: ordinary life on the outside, spiritual and divine authority at the center. Fun fact: the Portuguese marveled at Mbanza Kongo, nicknaming it São Salvador because of its size and urban planning. Contemporary records describe it as a city of thousands, with wide avenues, organized districts, and carefully laid out religious and political centers, evidence that Congo had a highly urbanized architectural tradition even before European influence. Religious architecture in Congo was a blend of indigenous spirituality and later Christianity. Before European contact, the Congo people built Mbanza and Nkisi, sacred shrines, made of wood, clay, and raffia. These structures housed Nkisi, ritual objects infused with spiritual power. Shrines were often decorated with carved wooden posts, masks, shells, and animal motifs, representing the connection between the physical and spiritual realms. After Christianity spread, Congo architects adapted by building churches in Mbanza Kongo and other provinces. The Cathedral of São Salvador, completed in the early 1500s, was one of the largest Christian structures south of the Sahara at the time. But instead of fully adopting Portuguese styles, Congo masons blended them with local traditions, using mud brick, wood, and local stone, while incorporating Christian symbols into African cosmology. Fun fact: missionaries noted that some Congo churches had carvings of the crucifix alongside African cosmological spirals, showing that Congo people did not abandon their traditions, but instead merged the two worlds in their sacred architecture. For ordinary people, homes were typically circular or rectangular huts, made of wattle and daub, woven branches plastered with clay, with conical thatched roofs. But their arrangement within villages showed a strong sense of order. Communities were not random clusters of huts. They were carefully structured around family lineages, farming zones, and spiritual spaces. Villages were often divided into clans, kanda, each with its own central courtyard for communal gatherings, justice hearings, and rituals. This created a socio-spatial order where architecture reinforced kinship and community. Architecture was more than just shelter. It was a visual representation of authority and cosmology. For example, high, wide-roofed structures symbolized power and status, often reserved for nobles or chiefs. Open courtyards symbolized transparency in governance, where leaders addressed their people. Decorative motifs carved into posts and doorways often included spirals, symbol of the universe, crosses, long before Christian influence, representing the four cosmic directions, and animal imagery tied to clan totems. Because the Congo Kingdom was plugged into Indian Ocean and Atlantic trade networks, architectural styles also reflected external contact. Imported goods, like red tiles, iron nails, glass beads, and carved wood, were integrated into buildings. For instance, Glass beads were sometimes embedded into shrine walls to activate their spiritual energy, a blend of material culture and spirituality. Portuguese influence brought new materials and styles, but Congo's adaptation was not passive imitation. The Congo elite consciously Africanized European architecture to fit their worldview, showing resilience and innovation. Before erecting a chief's residence, builders poured palm wine into the earth as an offering to ancestral spirits, ensuring protection over the house. While men handled large-scale palace construction, women were often responsible for thatched roofing and decorative clay molding, giving them an unrecognized but vital role in Congo's architecture. The grandeur of the Mbanza palace was meant to awe visitors and ambassadors, sending a clear message. Kongo was not a backwater, but a global player. Some shrines were built in circular layouts to represent the cycle of life, death, and rebirth, echoing the Kongo cosmogram, a powerful spiritual diagram of existence. Fun fact, the Kongolese used termite earth to harden their walls, making them resistant to rain and insects. Their city planning also had spiritual meaning. Streets were aligned with the rising and setting sun, symbolizing life and death. When Christianity arrived, churches were built on top of traditional shrines, blending the old with the new.